341. Finale. The Emperor and Qin Yun watched the movements of the extra-dimensional old gods without pause. Even when Erebus left the galaxy to seek them out, they knew. They did not stop him. A known enemy is easier to manage than an unknown one. Erebus might be a malignant force, but he was a fool the Emperor and Qin Yun knew how to control. If he could convince the extra-dimensional old gods to lend their power and launch an invasion, they could use him to study those entities up close and gather priceless intelligence. The threat of the extra-dimensional old gods loomed ever nearer. As the warp contracted, their approach into the galaxy accelerated, drawing the attention of the Great Devourer as well. In their antiquity and scale, the Great Devourer and the old gods stood on comparable footing. The Imperium had to be careful in how it dealt with the Chaos Gods so that the warp would not be so ravaged it could no longer stand against the old gods' corruption and invasion. As the warp's energies were consumed, vast stores of ether crystals formed. Players who accumulated enough law fragments could rise to demigods, or even full gods. These ascended players became the Emperor and Qin Yun's greatest confidence. Only with players could they hope to oppose the unfathomable power of the extra-dimensional old gods and their kin. The draining of the warp also left the high heavens stagnant. Many demons and warp creatures found survival increasingly costly. Merely maintaining themselves exhausted their strength. Still, the Imperium would not hesitate to purge them. As flawed products of the Chaos God's influence, they had to be cleansed for the warp to be made pure again. Qin Yun and the Emperor sent vast armies into the warp to sweep and cleanse the high heavens. Over time, the Chaos Gods weakened, but they remained terrifying. It was not until the laughing god Shile Gao led the Emperor and Qin Yun into the Black Library and revealed the deepest secrets of the Chaos Gods that they gained the confidence to act. With knowledge, and with allies such as Aisha, the goddess of life, Qin, the bloody-handed war god, and star gods like the Night Haunter and the Void Dragon, Qin Yun managed to pull the Chaos Gods back out of the warp. This was the culmination of the Old One's wisdom and the very foundation on which the Chaos Gods had been born. With the Chaos Gods retrieved, the war to annihilate them began in earnest. Slaanesh was first, the youngest and weakest, and naturally countered by the Eldar Death God. Players served as the vanguard while Star Gods and the Eldar Pantheon formed the main force. Even with domain blessings, Slaanesh's hordes could not stand against such combined might. When the Eldar Death God's longsword pierced Slaanesh, the Chaos God was forced back to his primal state. The Chaos Gods were immortal in nature. They could not be utterly destroyed, only reverted. With time, they could rise again, unless permanently contained. Many Eldar deities previously consumed by Slaanesh were released. Asurion, head of the Eldar Pantheon, sought parity and autonomy for his people. He misread the situation. Qin Yun and Xiling moved against him, forcing Asurion into an eternal oath of allegiance. The Old One's legacy had passed to the Imperium of Man. As creations of the Old Ones, the Eldar Pantheon was part of that inheritance. Thus, the Imperium controlled the Pantheon's lifeline. With Eldar support, the Imperium's power rose to new heights. Next, they struck at Tzeentch, whose strengths lay in psychic trickery and stratagem. Faced with overwhelming numbers, his armies broke. The Crystal Labyrinth fell. The Eternal Well, with its countless secrets, passed into human hands. Tzeentch, too, was reverted. Nurgle resisted far more stoutly. He ruled life, plague, and rebirth. Apparently corpulent, he was nevertheless formidable. In the end, the Emperor, with a host of allies, defeated him through relentless attrition. Khorne, last and strongest, embodied blood and war. Logically, the slaughter of his followers should have nourished him. Yet because the Ether Phase engine had been managed and humanity had claimed the Old One's legacy, Khorne received no reinforcement from Holy Terra. The warp's drying had even weakened him. Still, his final clash with the Emperor and the allied powers was apocalyptic. Sun and moon dimmed, the heavens shook, before he was finally forced back to his primal state. After the Chaos Gods were contained, Qin Yun and Xiling pored over the Old One's records. They repositioned the Chaos Gods within the warp, halted the Ether Phase engine's unchecked draining, repaired the temporal ruptures, and began rebuilding the high heavens. To prevent the warp from becoming a cesspit again, they separated it into the celestial realm and the abyss. The high heavens reflected souls and emotions, but that indiscriminate absorption had birthed the cesspit. The division established a cycle. The celestial realm would absorb positive energies, honor, kindness, justice, while the abyss would take negative ones, malice, depravity, indulgence. Conversion channels would turn those energies into resources for Holy Terra, creating a sustainable flow. Qin Yun also forged the human pantheon. The Primarchs were each given distinct authorities to regulate warp energies. Noble warriors and heroes became immortalized as humanity's heroic spirits. The corrupt were consigned to the abyss, their sins burned away as fuel. With these measures, the Imperium of Man came to dominate the warp, surpassing even the old ones, now bolstered by star god support and wielding the ether phase engine, able to uplift humanity continuously toward ascension. With the God Wars over, players turned to clearing the hostile races the Great Crusade had not fully purged. The Nephilim, who had treated humans as food, and the Kraph, who used humans as breeding vessels, were hunted down. Players delighted in using these hostile species as leveling fodder. Even the 7 great demons of the Calixis sector were sought out and defeated. The mystery of the Tyrant Star was solved. It had been an ancient demon attempting to steal the Dark King's authority, an impostor that only resembled the Emperor. To keep players engaged and growing, Qin Yun fashioned dungeons from famous demons and chaos traders. Event dungeons sometimes projected Primarchs like the Lion or Sanguinius. Defeating a projection brought rewards. Some of the mightiest players took missions beyond the galaxy to face kin of the extra-dimensional old gods, including Tyranids. The Imperium severed Tyranid tendrils that had crept into the galaxy and drove them back, blocking the Tyranids beyond the galactic rim. When the main Tyranid host eventually arrived, they and other old god kin might combine to provoke an unprecedented war. "War will never end," Jagatai Khan repeated, the same words he had spoken 10,000 years before during the Great Crusade. Victory over separatists and Xenos had always been temporary. The Chaos Gods had risen at the end of the Great Crusade, sparking the Horus Heresy and 10,000 years of suffering. The Emperor had suffered on the Golden Throne for a millennia-spanning agony to build the power needed to defeat them. Now, with the extra-dimensional old gods revealed, even victory might only be followed by new, unknowable threats. In a dark and endless universe, there would always be greater enemies. Humanity's lot was constant vigilance and endurance. This new reality did not dampen those who knew the truth. Players who had seen behind the curtain could still find joy and purpose. Warhammer 0L, initially expected to restart and enter open beta after the final battle, instead went directly into open beta following the defeat of the Chaos Gods. The official scope had always been grander than the game's title suggested. Warhammer had been a doorway, not the destination. Conquering the universe seemed the true aim. Fans joked and speculated. Some called it a human sealing empire. A new era had dawned. The Chaos Gods were neutralized for the time being. What the war with the extra-dimensional old gods would become, only time would tell. Destiny had become slippery and chaotic. The future was no longer certain. But as Qin Yun and the Emperor proved, perseverance still mattered. Humanity's greatest advantage remained its adaptability. Macador, who had once fallen into despair during the Battle of Terra, had learned that perseverance could turn the tide. The once invincible Chaos Gods had been driven back. The warp had been reshaped into order. These were victories hard won. The Emperor began to outline a new plan. Few trusted it. It sounded as unreliable as Tzeentch's own schemes, but with everyone's counsel, a coherent strategy emerged. Use the Chaos Gods as a buffer to slow any invasion, develop the galaxy, and rely on high-dimensional life forms, players, to probe and learn everything about the extra-dimensional old gods. Only with full understanding and effective counters could a true counteroffensive be mounted. In the Calixis sector, Feng learned the truths of Terra. He boasted that his vision had been sharp the moment he saw the Saint, why he had followed wholeheartedly and now become sector governor. Priest Tina, more blunt, reminded everyone Feng had nearly broken under the Plague Army's pressure and would have knelt to anything then. Such banter underscored what had changed. Whatever their pasts, everyone now recognized and fought for the Imperium of Man. Trials would come again, but humanity would keep finding ways to survive. Qin Yun would remain in the universe, continuing to guide the players toward new victories. Maybe one day the extra-dimensional old gods would be forced to bow beneath the two-headed eagle. P.S. All stories end, and this one is no exception. Despite putting down 1.4 million words and never making it into the premium category, I finished the book. After about 1.3 million words, I accelerated the pacing to close loose ends. I hope you'll support my next work. It should be uploaded in a day or two. Thank you for your support and encouragement. You're the reason I kept writing when I wanted to give up. 342. New book is on the way. The new book, I'm Already Invincible, but the apocalypse just arrived, is on its way. If you like it, please add it to your library and follow the series. I've already discussed the contract with the editor, and it's tentatively scheduled to launch on Sunday or Monday. New releases on Qidian rely on steady readership, so I hope everyone can spare a little time each day to check the newest page. Thank you very much. As usual, there will be a major update when it goes on sale.